Hi, this is Matt Paulson. We're going to talk about the debate that Michael Brown had with Zakir Hassan. There's 3 videos on YouTube. They're all a couple hours long, so they're all kind of lengthy. They make some great points, and I wanted to highlight a few of them because it's a really strong argument to say that Muhammad is not prophesied in the Bible. And if Muhammad is not found in the Bible, then the Bible is completely devoid of Islam. Islam is not found in the scriptures, in the Torah, in the Psalms, or in the prophets. And we're going to look at the Muslim side, so you can't say that there's some bias in the editing.
The topic of today's discussion is Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, foretold in the Bible? The answer to this question from the Muslim perspective is an obvious yes. Before I delve into the arguments in regards to the Prophet Muhammad being foretold in the Bible, I would first like to mention a few examples of the New Testament's attempts to prove that Jesus Christ was foretold in the Tanakh, or what the Christians call the Old Testament. The reason I would like to give a few examples from the New Testament is to show the standards Christians have with regards to so-called fulfillment of prophecies, especially since Dr. Brown often boasts and takes pride in these so-called prophecies. While a Muslim would have no issue with Jesus being foretold in the Tanakh, as we believe in his prophethood, nevertheless we do not close our eyes when it comes to blatant manufacturing of so-called messianic prophecies. Let me give a couple examples. Number 1, Matthew, for example, made up a story about Herod massacring the kids in Bethlehem when Jesus was born. Not only have historians such as Josephus, who wrote a great deal about the atrocities committed by Herod, not mentioned this, but what makes this even worse is that Luke contradicts this when he says that Jesus was born at the time of the census in the year 6 CE, 10 years after Herod had died.
It's not true. Luke does not say 6 AD. If you check, Herod died in 4 BC and Jesus was born probably 2 years before that. Josephus did not write about Herod's murderous atrocities, but he did write about Herod's death and also the death of Jesus. And Matthew mentions Herod's son by name, Archelaus. And Herod's execution of a few babies in the small town of Bethlehem would not be on the radar of a first century historian because most scholars think only about 60 to 100 children might have been perished in that event. And if Matthew's account is proven correct on about 50 or 60 places and events in the first century, the chances are him to be incorrect on one event is almost 0. Matthew's gospel account is more complete than most of the other gospels, and Luke says that Jesus was born during the reign of Caesar Augustus between 31 BCE and 14 AD. He does not give the exact date.
Moreover, Matthew also claims that due to Herod, Jesus had to flee to Egypt to fulfill Hosea 11. But when one reads Hosea 11, it is clear this is speaking about the children of Israel at the time of the Exodus. Once again, Luke contradicts this event. Thus we know Matthew made this up to make Jesus look like Moses.
That's absolutely not true. Luke is very accurate in 2:2. He mentions Cyrenius, who is talked about from Justin Martyr, Julian the Apostate, and Eusebius. And also Luke 2 included the Song of Mary and the Song of Zechariah. And those 2 songs are not included in any of the Gospels. And then in Luke 1:80, we have John the Baptist and his family living in the desert. And that most likely helped Mary and Joseph to flee to Egypt. And then in Luke 40, it skipped the account of Egypt, of course, and then it goes right to Jesus grew up safe and sound. And so that does not conflict with Matthew 2:15. And parallel prophecies are common in the Old Testament, New Testament. The test of Abraham was one, and Jonah and the great fish is another.
Number 2, in the Gospel of John, it is claimed that Jesus is the Lamb of God. The Synoptic Gospels make no such claim.
But do they have to? In Matthew, we have Jesus predicting his death in 2 days. And in Mark, we have a prediction that he's going to have burial. And then in Luke, we have that death, burial, and resurrection preached from Jesus in Luke 24:44. And then in the Old Testament, in Genesis 22, we have Isaac asking his father, hey, where's the lamb? But Abraham says, God will provide the lamb. So that's Jesus later. And then in Isaiah 53:7, we have, of course, a lamb who's going to be slaughtered. Who was that lamb? Was that the nation of Israel? No. And John the Baptist in John 1:29, he says, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And the Apostle John says in the book of Revelations, worthy is the Lamb who is slain. And that's Revelations 5:12.
Yet the Gospel of John not only changes the day Jesus was allegedly crucified, but also the time Jesus was crucified in order to prove Jesus is the Lamb of God.
There was no change in the time that Jesus was crucified. If you look in Mark 15:25, it's the third hour, and that's Hebrew time. And John 19, verses 14 to 15, it's the sixth hour, and that's Roman time. So there's no contradiction. It all makes sense.
In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus ate the Passover meal and died the next day. But John instead has Jesus die on the day of preparation for the Passover.
That's another lie. So if you check, all four Gospels state that Jesus was crucified on the day of preparation. And then if you check in the Gospel of John, it does say the preparation day of Passover was about the sixth hour, and he was crucified on that very day. So you got to check these guys because they lie a lot.
Once again, the biography of Jesus is being changed to fulfill alleged prophecies.
That would be really hard to do. There's dozens of prophecies in the Bible that show that Jesus is the Messiah. So without lies, Islam dies.